Do not harass or bother any names that may be mentioned in this video. I do not stand for that. I will no longer be speaking in terms of fandom and hatedom because that's too vague and lumps the good eggs with the bad. From now on, I'll be referring to those who blindly worship and die on every hill imaginable for something no matter how flawed or reasonable others' opinions are about it, but get shot down as the STANdom. And no better word could describe the diehards that completely overlook the critical views others have of Madrano's work. Which sounds harmless, like what you like, and if it's not for you, move on, but it becomes a problem when they are also excusing her behavior and actions towards others' valid and helpful criticism, or just their harmless opinions. The good faith criticism gets mixed with the blind hatred, and I, for one, am sick of it. Now, Viv is no stranger to controversy. You look her name up and there's backlogs of stuff she's been accused of and apologized for in her earlier years of being online, but also current accusations of years ago of transphobic comments and workplace abuse allegation that has yet to be addressed. And then there's people just making up anything about her just to see her taken down, so to speak. Whether they hate her for being a successful queer woman, her eye-catching art style, or nitpicking over merch designs that could be held to the same standards of any other shows, there's no denying that Viv does get her unfair share of hate and harassment, so much so that it gets mixed in with those actually criticizing and trying to hold her accountable, such as when one of her concept artists wasn't properly credited, and instead of acknowledging it, she just ended up blocking them. And unfortunately, there was another artist that worked on Hazbin who also wasn't credited. She hasn't made a public response yet, which becomes a concerning pattern and makes me worried of how many other artists didn't or were forgotten in the credits next time. Viv also has a pattern of blocking people that she doesn't agree with, vaguely tweeting about them, and the STANdom ends up finding and harassing them. It's a terrible cycle that she's been called out for numerous times before, but it just ends up repeating every time. Now, of course, I wouldn't fault her for blocking people that wish the worst upon her. She has every right to protect herself and her peace of mind. It's just unfortunate that those with the coldest takes get lumped into it. And yet, when it comes to her workplace abuse allegations and the Discord messages, it's radio silence. Or offhandedly saying that Discord messages are easy to fake. Okay, but if they are fake, then one would assume that it's just as easy to show the real ones, is it not? When Quite was accused of sexual assault last year, he took the time to gather all the evidence he could to debunk the claims against him, and did so successfully, clearing and proving his innocence. Well, yes, Viv has been working on 2 shows at once for the past few years now, which means she can be pretty busy. But if she can take the time to plan and go on vacations outside of the country while also working on her shows or taking a break from them, then she's more than capable of building up her own evidence to debunk these accusations. But she doesn't, which is a real head scratcher because you'd assume an innocent person would easily prove their innocence. And that's why a lot of people kind of look sideways about it. Honestly, it's really not doing her any favors by just sitting on her hands. It makes her look way worse. Viv hardly responds when there's serious accusations levied against her, but is fully active if someone dares criticize her work for excessive swearing? Which is by now the coldest take one could have. Doing something as harmless as a fan redesign of her characters, just for fun or even for practice and character study, has gotten many artists bullied online, all while Viv just sent a passive-aggressive tweet about redesigns. Yes, and while we're on that note, I would just like to say, leave Bug Enthusiast alone! He is just sharing his thoughts on the show like the rest of you, and they don't deserve stans camping out their Tumblr to see if he'll say anything else about the show. Also, stop misgendering them. He uses he, they. It's right in their damn bio. Get it right! Fuck! Yes, thank you, Clover. That, too, has been working my nerves as well. I'm so glad you put it into words. And as for the people deflecting the very real criticism of Viv because it's just the haters, may I ask, Was Cartoonchi just a hater for giving their reasonable feedback and thoughts on the show, how they hoped the writing could improve and continue putting out such high quality animation from an indie studio? Was Manga Kamen being just a hater when he expressed criticism for the lack of agency of the female characters or the issues he has with Stolitz? If you've seen either of their videos, then you'll know that the answer is a clear-cut no. But that didn't matter in the eyes of the STANdom. If they see anyone not kissing the show or the creator's butt, it must be an attack on their queen and themselves. They relentlessly harassed Cartoonchi to the point where they never wished to cover the show again, which was too little too late for those that sent them a wave of hate to realize that this terminally online reaction was beyond unnecessary. And manga got it so bad that it forced him to come out in hopes to ease the backlash because apparently it's homophobic to criticize a problematic ship if it so happens to be between a gay one. Which is another angle STANdom and even Viv takes to deflect criticism, assuming they're all homophobic, when ironically, the gays are the biggest group of critics of her shows, myself included. Man, the parasocial relationships actually go crazy, and Madronal isn't helping with how heavily active she gets into the online discussions, arguments, theories, and countless live streams where the real lore is hidden. Like, what the heck is up with that? Like, seriously, put the show in the show! Why do I gotta look through backlogs of countless years of live streams? Are you kidding me? Who has time for that? Apparently the stands. Now, of course, you'll have people disguise their blind hatred for Viv and her work under the guise of criticism, but that just brings down those of us that offer genuine critique. STANdom would take these overblown criticisms, such as the overly detailed character design, everything being red, and there being too much swearing to prove that these critics have nothing more nuanced or new to say about their absolutely flawless show, while ignoring the real reviewers and critics like me who bring up the rapid pacing, tonal whiplash, character inconsistencies, overcrowded cast, lack of female agency, and washed out color composition. You know, the actual criticism a lot of people have of Helluva Boss, and from the looks of it, Hazbin Hotel as well. Hell, every time I mention the lack of character and importance Millie has in Helluva Boss, everyone always says, oh, be patient, she'll have her episode soon. When the first video was made about how underutilized Millie was, you know, at the time, I was willing to wait and was very hopeful. But by the time of May this year, that would have been at least 3 years ago, and we've barely scratched the surface of this character. Meanwhile, Moxie got 3 episodes with the same premise, even overtaking what could have been such an easy take for a Millie episode. I'm no longer accepting the wait and see argument anymore, because it seems like there's no agency to get to these characters. So why bother giving expectations when there's none to be had in the first place? And honestly, the constant excuses I hear are laughable and delusional to think that organizing the episodes like this was okay, or to at least not think about how the structure of the order raises a few issues. No other show would get this kind of pass, so why should Helluva? And if you say it's because it's an indie show, I'ma stop you right there. Because for this show to garner so much support and put out such stellar animation, I think it deserves to be recognized for its greatness, as well as criticized fairly, within reason, like any other show should be. I didn't see anyone giving Korra an easy take when she was just meant to have a mini spin-off series. She got dragged for years. Even when critics make positive videos, the STANdom are so quick to jump the gun that they become the very bunch of haters and stalkers they claim to hate. And honestly, I fear it's gotten worse with Hazbin Hotel. Now, the trailer that was dropped looked amazing, but spoils the entire plot. The pilot and even the current synopsis still reads that Hazbin Hotel is about Charlie Morningstar, Princess of Hell, wishing to run a rehabilitation center in order to help sinners get to heaven and avoid the yearly exterminations, in order to make room in hell, which is an interesting and solid idea, and an optimist like Charlie makes a great contrast, but as the trailer showed, not only was Charlie's dream doubted by the angels and the cast, but it seems that all of hell are going to war with heaven? Which is, A choice. Not a good one, certainly not for season 1, and definitely not to have in the trailer. Yes, but at this point, I've come to accept that trailers just don't do a series justice these days. You remember Q-Force. I'll never forget them. And it is best to watch the full series to make your own judgment on the quality of the show. And by the time this video is out, the entire first season is complete. So unfortunately, I won't be sharing my thoughts on Hazbin Hotel until later. But I have seen it, and all I'm gonna say is, my expectations were low, but holy fuck. So if you're looking forward to that, subscribe so you don't miss it, and other Hazbin and Helluva videos we got cooking up. I'm just disappointed that not only did the trailer spoil the plot, but the merch may have spoiled the potential ending. Fans had a chance to purchase special limited merch that would give them access to the show a week before it releases. Specifically, first edition trading cards of characters and set pieces of the series. It's just too bad that they also contained spoilers, which we were given no warning about whatsoever until everyone started receiving their merch. But sadly, the damage was already done. A lot of people were putting together the pieces of the story we could expect from Hazbin, specifically based on the 3 distinctive hotel cards. What it looked like in the pilot, to being destroyed, and finally looking new and reflecting residents of the hotel. So could the possible message be as simple as, just be yourself and heaven's standards are bull? Well, I'd hope not, because that doesn't solve the overpopulation problem, now does it? My money's on heaven and hell allowing open passage to anyone, so to avoid overcrowding. I just hope I'm wrong. Okay, just to let you all know, I wrote that part before finishing the actual series, and thankfully, I was wrong! But heaven's standards are still bull, and there was hardly any mention of the overpopulation problem. Anyway, there's also character cards showcasing their unique personalities. We get a glimpse of the Lilith card sitting menacingly with her face hidden. She's gonna be the villain, isn't she? This is Charlie's mom, Lucifer's wife, or ex-wife, I should say, seeing that she doesn't share the Morningstar last name on her card, unlike her daughter and baby daddy. Plus, we don't see her face in the trailer either, just a sad baby Charlie as she's being taken away. I'm very curious about her, but I can't help but predict that she's gonna play an antagonistic role in the show somehow. And having watched the series, now I'm really betting on it for season 2. So Lilith fans are just gonna have to wait to see what she's gonna do. But as for the Alistair card...
What? It's just an ordinary crabby... Oh my goodness!
Viv has had years to educate herself on voodoo, and despite popular belief, Alistair's creation does predate Dr. Facilier from Princess and the Frog. Now, with the movie having been out years later, it is possible that Viv could have drawn inspiration from Dr. Facilier for Alistair's final concept, but we don't know for sure unless confirmed otherwise. And even if he was a one-to-one, there's many characters of similar archetypes that exist at the same time, but the problem in this case is that it's another depiction of a common misconception of voodoo being associated with evil magic. Now, for fans and people familiar with Viv's work, we know that Alistair is in hell because he's a cannibal and a serial not-aliver, who just so happens to practice voodoo, but the wider general audience who won't have this prior knowledge won't know that and assume that's another reason he's in hell. 1 million moms are clutching their pearls. Now, because there's so much to cover regarding the real practice as well as Alistair and the misuse of the portrayal of voodoo in the show, my original plan was to wait until season 1 is complete to fully discuss it. Besides, I've wanted to make a video on Alistair anyway, and kinda goes hand in hand with the much needed discussion of the show's use of voodoo symbols. Also, I think he's overrated. For now, I'll briefly touch on it here, as well as the anti-black and POC behavior that's been happening in the fandom in regards to criticizing Alistair and other quote-unquote black-coded characters in Hazbin. I'd also like to discuss his representation with those that had or are currently practicing voodoo, because it's their voices that matter most in this discussion. And we can all unlearn horrible misconceptions from the media. I'll have a Google form with questions in the description and in the pinned comment, if any practitioners are interested. Would love to chat and learn from you all. Thank you. Because voodoo has a history of being demonized by those that don't understand it, a lot of people are concerned about the use of real voodoo symbols, known as VVs, or inspired symbols in the show, especially when Alistair is going demon mode to hurt or threaten people. From what I've researched, and will gather more information for the Alistair video, the use of these very real symbols with powers outside of rituals that are meant to connect to ancestral spirits is considered disrespectful. which could have been avoided if the team had just made up their own symbols or used radio symbols. Oh, I just hope they don't use or mention voodoo dolls in the show as a means to torture people, because that's again another misconception that's been popularized by the media. The dolls are seen as tokens of good luck and blessings, not malice. Oh, you're not gonna like this then. What? It can't be that. Oh, fudge! I'll leave a link in the description that goes more into depth regarding the history and meaning of voodoo, as well as a video by a good friend of ours, the Great Berg, also discussing the misconceptions of voodoo. I highly recommend looking into them and doing your own research as well. I've learned so much about the practice through my own research, and if you have any articles or videos you would like to share to further educate folks, please do so in the comments. And please remember that the goal here is to educate people and not harass them or send them nasty DMs. I do not condone that whatsoever. So in a quick summary, voodoo is a closed practice to keep the rituals alive of enslaved West African descendants during the Atlantic slave trade, which is just one of the many examples of how Western ideals have demonized African culture and oppressed them from expressing it because of racism and white supremacy. From what I found, there's nothing inherently demonic about it, and if outsiders aren't permitted to practice it without permission from the high priestess, then just don't do it? Simple as that, actually. However, in the case of Alistair, in my research, I found that the West Africans are aware of misdeeds people use voodoo for, despite the practice being generally positive, like most religions. Damn, people will always find a way to weaponize God against them. I hate it here. To quote the NPR article, there is a dark side to voodoo. Sorcerers called Voduo can be summoned to put a hex on an adversary or bow, using the malevolent power of a voodoo spirit, which is one way to depict Alistair's use of voodoo, but based off of the trailer, promotional material, and episodes I've seen so far, that's kinda not the case. Many people of color, especially Black folks online, have been expressing their justified frustration and discomfort over another demonized depiction of the practice, and with every genuine attempt to educate people to explain why it's disrespectful for real VV to be used, they're assumed to be another bunch of Viv haters. The STANdom would rather ignore and shut down these fans' concerns just to keep forcing their toxic positivity over our cartoon. The entitlement of the STANdom claiming that closed practices are dumb and it's gatekeeping to do so is incredibly ignorant and overlooking why these practices are closed in the first place, to stop colonizers and appropriators from further erasing what these traditions mean and what sacred connection they hold to the ancestors. In the growing years of digital blackface, where Afro features in our culture are constantly appropriated to benefit non-Black people and yet deemed as inappropriate on the people whose identity is stemmed from it, is this just not another case of stealing from a culture and claiming it as your own, or twisting it to suit your narrative? Not everything is for you, and voodoo is just one example of many closed religions and communities. I don't see anyone rushing to join the Amish now, do I? That's what I thought, you fucking iPad babies. So, even though Alistair has been around for well over 10 years now after the pilot of Hazbin Hotel, Viv received a lot of backlash and justified criticism of Vivi in her silly little demon show. And even though she said that the use of symbols would be toned down in the actual series, from what we're seeing in the trading cards, promotional material, and now from the show itself,
so that was a fucking lie.
well, maybe if the series refers to him as a Botono sorcerer, that would show the team did their research at least. Or if Lilith is controlling him, that he is the vengeful voodoo spirit? I don't know. Just something about a white woman being in charge of a black-coded character in the chains just makes me very uncomfortable. Or better yet, Alistair being a white man misusing voodoo would be even better, because I don't care what the wiki's hours worth of live streams or an offhanded tweet said. This man is white and can kiss 1/4 of my Creole ass. Also, before y'all get to bitching in the comments, yes, Dr. Facilier was also heavily criticized for his portrayal of voodoo in The Princess and the Frog, and that was an actual black man. So that same critique can and should be carried over to Alistair, if done just as poorly. So saying that no one criticized this character of a multi-billion-dollar company isn't an excuse to let another character of the same flavor slide and not the own you think it is. Y'all just didn't listen or care to look into it at the time, just like now. Also, as for the other black-coded characters in the show, Emily, Seraphine, and Velvet, with the minor exception that Sarah's hair at least somewhat resembles locks, I could not tell you with a straight face or without looking it up that these other two bitches are black. Bad enough that everyone in the show has an ashy grayscale skin complexion, but did they really have to give my sisters little to no curls? And despite Viv being known for her spiky art style, her character designers prove that textured hair and afro features can work in her style. Also, straight hair is harder to animate than curly hair. Yeah, I said it. Genuinely, I want to be happy for Viv and her team for accomplishing something that's such a seemingly impossible feat and breaking through the barrier from indie to mainstream while also still running another show. But it's really hard to celebrate in the wake of the STANdom's blind devotion of her, and worst yet, Viv herself doing nothing about the alleged accusations and genuine criticism levied against her, and not even doing anything to discourage such behavior from the stands because she knows it's probably in her benefit. And yes, creators are not responsible for what their fans do. That's very valid, but at the very least, separating yourself from that behavior. It's the literal bare minimum. And said accusations just keep growing by the day now that PassionFru.it, an internet and pop cultural news site, has published an article interviewing anonymous current and former Spindle Horse employees, most of which fear coming forward publicly due to Madrano's power and stan backlash. And we have seen that before, such as with Aaron Frost. So I really don't blame them for being anonymous. While some would describe the working conditions as horrible, others would praise it for how professional it is. But knowing that some artists get paid more than others depending on their skill despite the workload, while others feel like they're barely scraping by, I can understand why the reviews of working under Spindle Horse can seem polarizing, especially when considering when one of Viv's friends, Adam, holds the roles of writer, supervising producer, and makeshift human resources. I just can't fathom how terrible working under those conditions must be and nervous those artists are to come forward when HR is ran by their boss's best friend. That's actually terrible management. But because people have made it sort of a meme to hate on anything that the woman touches, she has an army of keyboard warriors ready and willing to defend her from even the slightest backhanded compliment. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if we had a few of them in the comments like right now and they didn't even watch the video. It might be a sad truth. It happens from time to time. I don't wish to see any harm to come upon Viv, her team, or anyone that defends her. I'm just saying that there's gotta be a line drawn somewhere, because lumping in the genuine critics that also still have a lot of love and passion for these shows with the haters and nitpickers is gonna tear this whole fandom apart even further. And some people are aware of this and either don't care or will do whatever it takes to keep defending Viv if it means click, click, clicks, views, money, money, money. Oh, capitalism. The last thing I want to see is fellow creators feeling discouraged or afraid to voice their opinions just because it's not all too positive. So here's a few people I would recommend giving them a watch because they give fair and great criticism of the show that stems from a place of love or passion for it and hoping to see it improve. Also, just stop following Alamau and any of those copycat type YouTubers like that IOX guy. I don't fucking know, I just see it in my recommendations. Do not follow those guys because he's part of the problem of stans that will point out everything everyone else has done and their flaws, but leaves out Viv's. He is the worst of the bootlickers who'd excuse anything this woman does, even when she's at fault. He takes no clear stances one way or another, just uses vague buzzwords like, yes, it seems complicated. We need more time to think it over. Bullshit. Bros is a professional yapper. He's the hero hey of the Helluverse. Oh, and remember, please don't attack anyone mentioned in this video. Best not to interact with the stands either. It's just like talking to a brick wall. Block and move on with a greater peace of mind. Thank you all for listening, and please be kind to yourselves.